In all, all right, in all seriousness, here we go. I'm Gene Still from No TMI Restart, and today is the anniversary of the 46 years ago the plant melted down. 46 years ago, and today's the anniversary of that meltdown. And so we're here to commemorate that, at the same time give our message that there should be no restart. Okay. We're here today to commemorate the anniversary of 3 Mile Island meltdown 46 years ago today. And at the same time, we're here to give our message, united, that there should be no TMI restart. And so today we're going to go over a few restart things that we're fighting for. But right now we're going to look back in time. And one of the fellas who's wants this plant to turn on is Josh Shapiro, our governor. At the time of the accident, he was 5 years old, all right? So he was 5 years old, knew nothing about anything. And apparently from his actions, he doesn't know anything about anything now. So my point is that the governor met with Constellation Energy, but he hasn't met with these people, the actual people who live here, all right? So we want that to happen. Right now, though, I'm going to introduce you to a number of women who were there during the accident, all right? They're at the accident. So ladies, come forward, okay? And Beth and Paula are going to speak, okay? So everybody's going to come forward and stand here, okay? Christine. You were here. Okay. All right, right there. Okay.
Good morning. I am Beth Drasba, one of the 4 moms that has been actively pursuing the truth of the accident for over 46 years. Okay, sorry. Better? Okay. I was asked to say just a few things this morning, but after 46 years of my adventure and journey and sadness, that's pretty hard to do, but I'll give it my best try. A few words would never suffice exactly what me and my family had experienced. The accident at 3 Mile Island changed me and my whole concept of being a mom. I was a stay-at-home mom with 2 children. I found a voice that I never anticipated when the NRC lied at the level that they did over those 3 days, and lack of responsibility to us as citizens on those infamous days as they have become that. The NRC took my power away for me to protect my family, and that lack of power has lasted over a lifetime. The accident, the evacuation, the cleanup, the restart, the uncertainty of a normal life ever being normal again, and the fear of cancer always knocking at my front door is everything that we have lived through in this nightmare. And I say nightmare because as of this date, we still don't have answers that we need to justify what has happened to our family members since then. Despite all of this, we stand here today as a group to continue to voice our opinions about the NRC and its inability to do everything it can to be truthful, honest, fair, safe to its citizens. Time does not erase memories or documentation of events. Time is probably our greatest resource. I was here a couple of months ago, and I had finished talking, and I was talking to a cameraman with a Notre Dame hat on. I am Notre Dame. So we had a little bit of chiding back and forth. When an elected official came over and asked me if he could speak with me, and I said, absolutely, how can I help you? And he said to me, I want you to realize you are too old to appreciate the new technology of nuclear power. I stood there a minute and I was stunned at the level of disrespect and condescending attitude. But being a mom, and a gracious mom because I raised 2 good kids, I said, I might be too old, but I am wise enough to appreciate what I have lived and build a foundation of truth on it, compared to building something new on a cracked foundation in the middle of an island. I honestly believe 3 Mile Island was everything we didn't need on how it was handled for us, the survivors of it. I say, let it be a symbol of what should have never been and which should never be again. Thank you.
My little farm sits 3 Mile Island as the crow flies from what was to be 4 towers showing us the promise of energy too cheap to meter. Today, those 4 towers represent the perils, the uncertainty, the corruption of our lives today in the midst of those 4 shadows.
Thank you, Patty. Patty has a farm right down near the island. Next, Christine.
Okay, my name is Maria Frisbee, and I was here when we had the partial meltdown at 3 Mile Island, and it was just a horror because I was a freshman at Middletown Area High School, and I remember all of the parents rushing to the front of the school to come inside. They looked so scared and frantic. And when my mom came to pick me up, and when we went outside, I had a strong metallic taste in my mouth, and the air felt like it felt thick. It didn't feel right. And I understand that a lot of people had a metallic taste in their mouth, and I found out that that was radiation poisoning. Anyway, years later, there are a lot of people in the Middletown, Pennsylvania area and the surrounding areas who are being diagnosed with multiple cancers. There's cancer clusters in families where a few people are getting cancer at the same time, and it's just a big cancer cluster. And we know that it was caused by 3 Mile, and no doubt it was caused by 3 Mile. And not only did the radioactive gas affect people with cancer, but it affected the plants, animals, and insects with mutations and deformities. So that happened too with Chernobyl and Fukushima as well. So no, we do not want that plant to reopen because it's going to be a living, you know what, if it's open up again. These people who live in the area, they have no clue what they'll go through if we have another partial meltdown. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. The concerned mothers of Middletown, Paula Kinney and Joyce Karate, Beth Drosba, and Linda Brash have been in a movie called Radioactivity, The Women of 3 Mile Island. So look that up and keep that in mind. Here's Paula Kinney.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for coming. Okay. Thank you, Beth. I mean, I don't know how to condense 40-some years and what we've been through, but thank you, Beth, for doing a good job. One of the things that is my mantra today is when profit is involved, shortcuts are taken. I wanted to just speak to you briefly about what it was like for the evacuation for us at 3 Mile Island. And after all these years, I vividly remember the trauma of living within the magical 5-mile radius of 3 Mile Island. The nightmare of the first evacuation included lines at the gas pumps, lines at the banks, malfunctioning sirens, conflicting information, jammed phone lines, because back then there were no cell phones, and basic confusion and panic. There was and is a protocol when you go to pick up your children at school. You go to the office, etc. My neighbor and friend, Nancy, worked in the cafeteria at the school where my children attended. She told me the day of the evacuation was total chaos. The parents ran to the cafeteria, grabbed their children and child, and while they were in the middle of eating their lunch, she said both the children and the parents were in an atmosphere of terror. It was a day we'll never forget, never. When we got our tax notices, there were evacuation plans included. We were told that we could not go for our children. I don't see that happening, but that's what was in the evacuation plan. They were going to transport all the children at the schools at the Fruhoff tractor, in a Fruhoff tractor trailer. And if any of you know, when the door is closed in the back of the tractor trailer, you can't see your hand in front of you. It's pitch black. And remember that these are the same children that went through the first evacuation terror. They also noted that we were to travel on the turnpike. Unfortunately, we noticed that we would be traveling in the opposite direction of the traffic. We then went to the next board meeting and brought it to their attention, and they assured us that they would have someone there to remove the middle concrete barrier. Words either on paper or spoken can sound so simple and easy, but unless you lived the nightmare of the first evacuation, you would know there's no such thing as an evacuation for 3 Mile Island. Thank you.
Okay, one thing we noticed that this today, it's about many things, okay? But right now, we want to focus on one thing right now. That's the evacuation planning, all right? And there's 10 things to remember about evacuation planning, all right? First of all, Keith, if you could hold up this evacuation sign and hold it a little bit down, like right here. Turn it around, yep. Oh, there's on two sides. But hold it down a little bit like this so we don't get the glare. Well, okay, is that good for the cameras or too much glare? Is that good? All right. Hold it up higher a little bit. Now it's even better. We can't see you. You can put it down. You can put it down. And okay, there's 10 rules to evacuation planning right now. 10 rules, okay, that we go by, all right? After 3 Mile Island, could you stand over a little bit that way, a little bit over that way, a little bit? Okay, got the camera right there, okay. And back about a half a foot. Okay, there you go. After 3 Mile Island, the Rogovan report was put up by the NRC, the federal government, and a statement volume of the major report. It said, "We believe the NRC's proposed 10-mile evacuation zone is by itself inadequate as an arbitrary cutoff point, and as 3 Mile Island has demonstrated, an ordered evacuation out to 10 miles would undoubtedly have the effects to 20 miles or more. Therefore, significant centers of population beyond this 10 miles must be considered in planning. Certain rules must be established in the minds of central Pennsylvania residents that may not be there now. During Constellation's misguided push to restart Unit 1. First, evacuation isn't possible. Total confusion and chaos is created during an area-wide evacuation. 2, 10-mile evacuation zone is arbitrary. 3, who knows which way the wind blows? The commercial says shingles doesn't care. Well, guess what? Radiation doesn't care. Radiation is 4. Radiation does not stop at a 10-mile arbitrary limit. Radiation is carried in the air, the water, and settles into the land anywhere the winds and the rains take it. Sheltering in place means you shelter with radiation. 5. Radiation is not controlled by the 10-mile arbitrary line. Radiation can go way beyond any false arbitrary 10-mile boundary. 6. The safest way to mitigate radiation hazard is to eliminate that hazard. In the present case, this means no restart of 3 Mile Island. It's the safest course for you and your family and your friends. No restart of 3 Mile Island cures the problem. 7. Evacuation of the area in the 10-mile zone impacts the regular lives of all residents, the local economy, and impacts the enjoyment of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness guaranteed by the Pennsylvania and our national Constitution. 8. Radiation accidents have the ability to Radiation accidents have the ability to shut down the Pennsylvania economy in central Pennsylvania just for the benefit of 2 large corporations, Constellation Energy and Microsoft, who only care about their profits. 9. The intelligence of local residents deserves to be recognized when the giant utilities and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission try to pull the wool over their eyes. 10. We are not going back. The old ways when central Pennsylvania lived under the threat of a running 3 Mile Island are over. The meltdown at 3 Mile Island Unit 2 has never been fully cleaned up. 700 metric tons are right there. Highly radioactive waste generated from Unit 1 and Unit 2, never removed, will be radioactive for tens of thousands of years, making 3 Mile Island what it was not supposed to be, a forever nuclear waste site. And lastly, for us to evacuate is impossible. And we have to look at a few sectors very quickly. I'm going to go over a few sectors here. If you will, right here. These beds represent the 7 of the 10 hospitals in the area. Right here we have all the hospitals in the area here from all the different cities. And here's a few of the beds, okay. Hershey Medical, 500. Harrisburg, 400. Wellspan, 700. That'll cost a lot. A total of 3,500 beds. 3,500 beds, okay. How do you move 3,500 people? How do you move these people? You don't, okay? You don't move them. There's not enough ambulances anywhere to move these people, all right? It's a total fallacy for any of the EMS or PEMA people in the state of Pennsylvania. Secondly, schools, retirement homes. There's 100 retirement homes, okay, here. 100 retirement homes or more. How do you move all those people? How do you do that? You can't, all right? And by the way, all these hospitals have over 2 million visitors a year for procedures in the hospitals. Evacuation is insane. Third, schools. Tens of thousands of school students are at risk from TMI evacuations. See these buses here? These buses here represent maybe 2,000 buses that you need to evacuate kids or more, okay? And who knows if the drivers are going to show up? Who knows if the bus companies are going to be even allow their buses to do that, all right? Next, we have here state government, all right? This is our state government here and all the buildings around here. The Capitol you're in right now, this is state government. You can't have this in the evacuation zone and survive, all right? This has to be in the minds of those people at the NRC who are deciding on this. You cannot evacuate state government from the central Pennsylvania. We're turning to transportation here now. Transportation, every day, tens of thousands of tractor trailers go through the area here. Tens of thousands, right? Tens of thousands, all right? Next, you have rail, big yards, Enola Yard, Harrisburg Yard, and the Rutherford Yard. Okay, trains carrying all those double stacks on them. Okay, tens of thousands a day. Central Pennsylvania is the crossroads of central Pennsylvania. Evacuation is impossible. Next, churches, all different denominations. Every Sunday, every 500,000 people or so go to church. Okay, I'm sorry. You have to think about that too. Lastly, we have 2 prisons in the area, 3,000 people at the Camp Hill prison over there. How do you evacuate that? And the different prisons from the different counties, thousands of prisoners, impossible to evacuate. Also, don't forget, you also have the New Cumberland Army Depot, and you have the Navy Ships Park Control. I'm using the old names, all right? They're logistics bases, all right? Thousands of people work there. If 1,000 people go away, guess what? All your forward area, your forward bases are not going to get their supplies. It's damaging to the economy in depth, all right? And also, I hope you like the large tractor trailer I brought today. Anyhow, and lastly, every month, 1,000 flights a month out of the airports nearby, Harrisburg International and the little airports, thousands of flights there. Lastly, and most importantly, how many farms are in the 4 or 5 counties here? 4 or 5 counties here, all the animals in the 4 or 5 counties, tens of thousands of animals, all right? Tens of thousands of animals are in the 4 or 5 counties, and guess what? Guess what they all walk on, what the crops are all grown on? The soil, all right, the soil. The soil of central Pennsylvania will be contaminated. We cannot take any of these risks at all, therefore, no evacuation. So right now, and the most important thing are the people of central Pennsylvania. There's nothing like having a few monopoly pieces to represent the houses of central Pennsylvania, all right? So there's only one solution to this whole thing, all right? To save everything, the schools, the retirement homes, nursing homes, everything, 3 Mile Island, Unit 1 cannot be restarted, and it must be removed. Simple as that. That's all. Okay, now, enough said there. For the man who knows most about 3 Mile Island, and also you all know Eric Epstein. Eric is one of the hardest working men against the restart that I know, and he's uncomparable, all right? So thank you, Eric. Here's Eric.
I'm here for the eye candy. The pronunciation of my name is Epstein. If you forget it, there were 3 great Jews, Einstein, Epstein, and Frankenstein. I'm Epstein, Jew in the middle. People over to the left are from the industry. I find that interesting since nobody, and I have this as recorded, from TMI Unit 1, and let's be clear, the name is 3 Mile Island Unit 1. Change in names, the effort to erase history is shameful. I'm sorry, is it better there? All right, thank you. So, find it really disturbing that during the public input process of the litigation, the company, Constellation, refuses to ask questions and refuses to respond to our inquiries. There was recently a lot of media about TMI 1 being ahead of schedule without anybody asking the question, what's the rush? What's the rush? I mean, at the end of the day, you can't outrun radiation. Let me give you an empirical, objective view of where 3 Mile Island Unit 1 is with the restart. It's a heavy lift, and they don't have enough workers. And they're likely going to have to cannibalize the Mid-Atlantic workforce, which would spread them thin. So TMI 1 restart, or the effort to restart, will have a domino effect. You heard a lot today about evacuation. We were the only community asked to evacuate preschool children and pregnant women within 5 miles of the plant. Population was 5,000, 144,000 people left. That's known as a shadow evacuation. There is no invisible lead curtain 10 miles from a plant. Just doesn't work. I would also like to point out, and I have an extra copy, we were at the NRC 3 times trying to get, and unsuccessfully not getting, daycare and nursery schools in the evacuation. 74 schools. Chaos. The other point people don't really talk about, and I can talk to as a school board director, if there's an evacuation, how can I make sure the people that my kids are being evacuated with have a clean record? So, when it comes to evacuation, again, this is a point that we've raised for the last 46 years. There's populations in this area that literally can't be evacuated. Amish, Old Order Mennonites, and tourists. We have a ton of tourists in the summer. And this evacuation is different. They're not going to use sirens. They're going to use, digital communications. Pretty hard to talk to somebody when they don't have a phone. So here's where we're at legally. Constellation does not have enough water to operate 3 Mile Island Unit 1. We intervened in that case at the Susquehanna River Basin Commission. They only have enough water for a shutdown plant. They recently filed for an MPDES permit. It was 612 pages. We copied it. We're going to litigate that. They have not filed for a 401 water qualification plan. We'll litigate that. I don't know what universe Constellation is on, but all of these cases need to be litigated at DEP, the NRC, and the SRBC, and it takes time. People have talked about TMI being a radioactive waste site. Unit 1 has 700 metric tons. They're out of casks, so they're going to have to build another facility. TMI 2 that's never been cleaned up is also going to have a facility. So you're going to have 3, they're called independent spent fuel storage installations, 3 of these at TMI on an island below the floodplain. That floods, that empties in the Susquehanna River, which empties into the Chesapeake Bay. I cannot think of a worse place to store radioactive waste. The other thing, from a historical perspective, 1973-74 was a Arab oil embargo. 3 Mile Island came online with the hope that they would be the answer to our dependence on oil. Flip it, all right, 50 years, Constellation is dependent on Russian uranium. All we've done is switched our addiction from Arab oil to Russian uranium. How's that for national security? Oh my. In the old days, these pages would come apart. All right. There we go. So here's the reality. We're retrofitting an Edsel. TMI, like Duane Arnold and like Palisades, the 3 plants that they're restarting, are all small plants. All came online in 74. This will do nothing to alleviate any perceived or real energy shortage. All the energy from TMI will go to data centers in Northern Virginia, Ohio, and Illinois. That's a fact. So we're operating this plant at great risk. And 3 things are very interesting. They're going to get subsidies. They say they don't, but they are. If you look at the fuel, the price for energy is $48 a megawatt. Microsoft agreed to pay 120 megawatt. The federal government will subsidize the difference. That's to the tune of $200 to $300 million a year. But TMI 2 came online the same time as the Ford Pinto, and I don't see us running around reopening Ford Pinto plants, which was by the way. And nobody's asked the question, what about the parts? The plant's 50 years old. They sold their parts. They have to, I mean, the reality is we're operating a very old plant without replacement parts with a new crew. It's risky. We heard this tune before. The nuclear industry always makes assurances, confident predictions, and guarantees. Today was the first time I was told somebody was too old to be involved. The new reactors are recycled old reactors. They're not going anywhere. It doesn't make economic sense. They're too small. Changing the name, really. You cannot erase history. You cannot rebrand a nuclear disaster. Changing the name doesn't make the radioactive waste disappear. So what's next? Are we going to rename the Titanic the Love Boat? I mean, you know, maybe Gettysburg will call the Pickett Center for Excellence. But by renaming the name is not only arrogant, the proposed name change is an act of cultural vandalism. How dare they? And nobody's going to replace Christopher Crane, Clean Energy City. So who is Chris Crane? He's right over here. Chris Crane presided, and he's since passed, over $200 million over a bribery scandal in Illinois. He was head of Exxon. His subsidiary ComEd paid $200 million. If you don't believe me, just look at their own shareholders report. In 2022, Chris Crane's compensation package was $30 million. He had a $4.2 million reduction because of the corruption case. The proxy statement, this adjustment is appropriate because Mr. Crane was serving as the CEO of Exxon, Commonwealth Edison's parent at the time the conduct occurred. So that's who they're naming the plant after, all right? They're not naming it after Gandhi. They're not naming it after some iconic figure in American public life, but we're naming it after a guy who presided over one of the worst nuclear scandals in history. That's one hell of a role model. So where are we racing? This is the race to the bottom. History matters. MedEd raced, hurried to get Unit 2 on schedule, and they did. They got it online December 78 so they could get it in the rate base. Then it melted down 90 days later. That's a fact. That's history. The plant that melted down is 3 Mile Island. It will always be called 3 Mile Island. This attempt to erase history or make up a new series, a new scenario is shameful. So let me just conclude by saying we have likely 3 cases at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission we're going to litigate. We have 2 cases at the DEP we're going to litigate. And we have 1 case at the Susquehanna River Basin we're going to litigate. This is not a done deal. And I think what we learned before, if you put all your eggs in the nuclear basket, you get scrambled. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. If you turn to stage left or out there right, you'll see this industry over there, right? And they are the enemy over there. Okay, they are the enemy of Central Pennsylvania, right there. All right, right there. Enemy of Central Pennsylvania, right there. And so they have a lot to learn, and we're going to teach them. We're going to teach them. All right.
I have one thing. Just one thing. Yeah, I'm sorry. To be clear, and we have not been able to get a response from TMI-1. If you want to see what it looks like when the community interacts with TMI, and this was TMI-2, go to the TMI-2 Solutions Advisory Panel, and that'll give you some idea of how ill-prepared the industry and the NRC are to answer questions. I apologize for the addendum.
That's okay. That's okay. Okay, thank you, Eric. A lot of questions there. Next, we have Scott Porchline. Scott Porchline has researched the 1979 nuclear meltdown for 40 years. Scott has examined more than 4,500 pages of nuclear safety security documents at the National Archives and all the other agencies. It is because of his ability to remember the technical details of the 1979 emergency, combined with his ongoing research on TMI, he discovered serious safety defects at Unit 1. This defect is being overlooked by regulators and remains unanalyzed by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, despite Scott's efforts. Okay, here is TMI Scott Porchline to update us about Here is Scott Porchline to update us about the distressing insufficiency with the Unit 1 new steam generator. Scott. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. Thank you. I'd like to update everyone regarding our allegations of a safety defect with the TMI Unit 1 steam generators. Because of an overly aggressive design and a manufacturing error, some of the steam tubes located inside the steam generators were damaged by fluttering and banging into each other. This happened under normal operating reactor conditions. However, if it were to be higher temperatures like those associated with a reactor transient on the way to an accident, the data indicates that the fluttering could worsen to the point of self-destruction. So the steam generators would tear themselves apart. If they fail in this manner, you'll have a loss of coolant accident. And in this particular scenario, a containment bypass accident would be catastrophic. Radiation would bypass the containment building and be released immediately into the environment. 3 weeks ago, I did discuss this once again with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, this time with a task force composed of the NRC and the steam generator industry. I was told that the NRC had already dismissed my allegations a few years ago, but I pointed out that the NRC could not provide justification for the dismissal or provide a single line of engineering data or opinion. The NRC had instead pointed to entire documents which did not even discuss the fluttering, let alone fluttering under higher temperatures. The NRC could only provide data for static testing, that is, where there's no motion and therefore no fluttering. I asked if there was any testing done at TMI Unit 1 with the coolant and water flowing through the steam generators. Constellation had inspected the steam generators last May. The answer was no. So it remains the condition has not been properly analyzed, and without such testing and analysis, the NRC cannot license Unit 1. Unit 1 should not reopen unless this risky deficiency is resolved. We are prepared to take this safety issue before the Atomic Safety and Licensing Board, where we expect to get a fair hearing. I want to shift the topics just slightly. It's fitting to note that 2 years prior to the meltdown, 3 Mile Island Alert warned that Reactor 2 was dangerously faulty. Another warning from us in 1992 declared that security at TMI was insufficient. The following year, an intruder drove his car past a guarded entrance, then through a security fence and through the turbine building roll-up door, stopping 63 feet inside. He exited the car and hid for nearly 4 hours before being apprehended. One last point. Those are the 2 warnings issued by TMI Alert. A third warning, fortunately, proved inaccurate. In 1999, right here in the Capitol, I predicted that terrorists would attack a nuclear plant within 3 years. Well, 2.5 years later, the 9/11 attacks occurred. The original plan was to attack nuclear plants. 1 month after the attacks, on the evening of October 17, 2001, F-16 fighter jets were scrambled to protect against an airborne threat made by Al-Qaeda to attack 3 Mile Island with an aircraft. This is all part of our history. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Scott. And last on the agenda is Diane D'Arrigo. I've known Diane for many, many years, decades, and she is a specialist from the Nuclear Information Resource Service in Washington, D.C., and she's been all over the world studying nuclear waste. And guess what? We have the exquisite pleasure of having one of the biggest rivers in America with 3 nuclear plants on it. And guess what? Susquehanna plant, Peach Bottom, and here, and all have nuclear waste that was never supposed to be here. And so we have the most nuclear-prone river in America, 444 miles of nuclear waste, nuclear plants in the river. So Diane is going to tell us about the future. But guess what? One of the most irresponsible things to do is create more waste, create more possible harm by having this plant reopen. Diane?
If this community allows the restart of 3 Mile Island, you have to accept the reality that this is a permanent nuclear waste site. At least now, there is an alleged queue to move the waste that's been generated thus far to a permanent repository. There is not one. There is not even a design for one. But any new waste that's generated, you can pretty much assume is going to be permanently here. So if you're touting and celebrating more energy, be aware that it is going to stay here. The waste that's generated will be here permanently. In the words of a veteran nuclear watchdog, Michael Keegan from the nuclear reactor in Michigan, electricity is but the fleeting byproduct of the creation of long-lasting radioactive waste by nuclear power reactors. Every bit of electricity that comes from nuclear comes from splitting the uranium atom. When the atom splits, the energy that held it together heats the turbines and makes the electricity. Heats the water, turns the turbines, and makes the electricity, but it then creates radioactive elements that create high-level waste, so-called low-level waste, and routine releases into the water, into the air, into the environment, into the food chain, into our bodies, into our genetic material. So in addition to causing cancer, birth defects, heart disease, it also reduces immunity, making us less able to fight off the health effects, these ailments that are caused by radioactivity. The metal casks that hold the waste on 3 Mile Island now and would potentially hold future waste are designed to last 50 years. The waste lasts literally into the millions of years. It is dangerous now and will remain dangerous for literally thousands, millions of years. So those canisters are not adequate to isolate it. And they vent, they exhale radioactive air as they're sitting there. There will be 50 casks now, and if a new restart occurs, obviously there will be many more. There are over 92,000 metric tons of irradiated fuel in the U.S., which, with each reactor generating about 20 tons annually. This one's more like 16 tons annually. The fuel in the casks give a lethal dose in minutes, unshielded. So the thin-walled metal NAC casks at TMI that are surrounded by concrete to shield them, none will last as long as the radioactive material inside. They must be closely monitored indefinitely and eventually recontainerized. Probably speaking to those well-educated here, that some of the hundreds of radionuclides include plutonium, one of the deadliest substances on Earth, dangerous for 1/4 to 500,000 years, cesium and strontium, dangerous for 300 to 600 years. Cesium goes to our muscles when it gets into the environment and into our food, can initiate ischemic heart disease, and strontium goes to our bones and our teeth, so causing leukemia and bone cancer. Radiation is known to cause these health effects. There is no safe level, but routinely that TMI site is releasing or would release legal levels, so-called legal levels, but these are not safe levels. Each cask has more radioactivity than was more cesium than was released in the Chernobyl accident that started in '86, and more plutonium than was released in the Nagasaki bomb. So in addition to the harmful releases that started back in '79 and the routine releases of nuclear power operation, this community has an intensely radioactive waste dump in its midst, and it will only be made larger, much larger, if there's a restart. There's no permanent disposal place, and most importantly, there's no permanent way to isolate the waste. Whatever area is chosen will be a sacrifice area, and we are currently a sacrifice area. Constellation is the largest nuclear power company with the most reactors in waste, and renaming it Crane does not make it Crane clean radio, whatever you're going to name it. It's not going to make it clean. It doesn't make it so. The site will remain radioactive. More waste makes it even worse. And restarting TMI-1 will make the already impossible economic, environmental, health, environmental justice problems with nuclear waste exponentially worse in Pennsylvania, in the communities across the country.
Thank you, Diane. The activists up here, okay, who are standing in front of you, okay, we're a bunch of old codgers, but I'll tell you what it's all about. You know what it's all about? It's about that little girl right there. It's about the future right there. That's what this is about. That's what it's about, right there, that little girl. Two things, okay. One, with us today we have Mike Scarlett. Mike, could you stand up, please? Mike is... Yep, okay.
Jesus Christ. Sorry, I got a broken back.
Mike is an attorney, a friend of mine, but also he's a great musician, some Nashville experience. And so we're announcing today that in the summertime we're going to have a 3 Mile Island concert here, okay, to raise funds to fight the restart, and also just to let people know, obviously we're not going away. Here's what we're going to do right now, okay? Right now we're going to look back 46 years ago, 3 Mile Island hearings were going on. What were those hearings about? The safety of a nuclear power plant in the pathway of Harrisburg International Airport. Those hearings were stopped when the accident happened, okay? Those hearings were never restarted. And guess what's happened since then, all right? What's happened since then is that we have a big thing going on. It's called continuous terrorism, all right? And what have they used in the past 30 years, past 20 years? Airliners into the World Trade Center, and also since the don't look at that. Airliners since the World Trade Center, airliners, and also the Ukraine war has taught us all about drones. So 3 Mile Island, as it is now, is a terrorist target. We cannot forget that. So that's important to you know, does the Crane Clean Energy Center have rockets down there to take drones out of the air? No, they can barely do anything. Anyhow, we're going to keep on going, and that's about it for today. Okay, everybody here, we're meeting downstairs for dinner, lunch. I say, we're going to meet downstairs for lunch on me downstairs. All right, after we pack up, and any questions for the press? Any questions for the press, or did we cover it all? I think we covered it all. We showed you who the enemy is over there, all right? We showed you who the good guys are right here. Yeah, Scott. Any questions? Okay. Go ahead, Scott. Careful.
Regarding drones at nuclear